Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding today's very important hearing. You and I were here together just 2 years ago discussing the security risks associated with vast databases of consumer information like those compiled by data brokers like Equifax. We spoke of such companies as being the perfect target for cyber criminals, and we discussed the lack of accountability that data brokers have to the Americans whose very sensitive information they collect, analyze, and share on a massive scale. We also talked about the worst case scenario, what happens when there is an unprecedented breach of a company that trades on the information of people with whom they have no direct relationship or no particular set of obligations. Well, unfortunately, we all know that we're here today, again, because that worst case scenario is our new reality because of the gross failures of Equifax as well as a lack of safeguards protecting our privacy and security. 145 million Americans, including over 2 million Minnesotans, are facing the risk of identity theft for the rest of their lives, from tax fraud and medical identity theft to even driver's license theft. The threats of individuals' financial security and, frankly, of their livelihoods are too numerous to count and will persist for decades. To make matters worse, the Americans who could be hit the hardest are the ones who may be least able to bear such a burden. According to a Department of Justice survey, the average victim of identity theft loses $1,343 in stolen assets and expenses. That's money out of Americans' pockets for Equifax's failures, and it's a significant burden for most Americans. And let's not forget or downplay what this breach means for our national security. Whether a foreign power was actually behind the cyber attack on Equifax, there's no longer any doubt that a hostile foreign government could use the exposed information to target Americans for blackmail or influence future elections. Mr. Smith, I know you're about to tell us how sorry you are, and I'm sure that you've had a lot of sleepless nights in recent months, but as a business that has consistently operated with little or no regard for the well-being of American consumers, I'm wondering whether you and the rest of Equifax's leadership foresaw the gravity of a breach and failed to take the proper precautions because you simply don't care, and because you don't have to care. Equifax won't be losing any business as a result of its failures. American consumers are not able to walk away and take their business or their personal information elsewhere. And that's because those consumers aren't actually your customers. They are your product. And you've been treating them as such for years. Perhaps that's why in February of this year, the CFPB reported that the 3 big credit bureaus were ranked numbers 2, 3, and 4 in the agency's consumer complaint database, trailing behind only Wells Fargo. According to a 2012 FTC report, 1 in 5 credit reports contains an error. But for years, consumers have struggled to meaningfully correct that information. And just this year, Equifax settled with the CFPB for ripping off consumers over its website, claiming to, quote, offer, quote, free credit scores, when in actuality they were signing up for a $16 a month subscription service. Mr. Smith, your disregard for your customers was particularly evident in the first days following the disclosure of the breach, when Equifax attempted to force harmed individuals into arbitration and insisted on charging consumers to freeze their credit, practices that were changed only after massive public outcry. So today's hearing is an opportunity to get to the bottom of what Equifax didn't do that it should have done, but also to think carefully about the future of data brokers and the credit reporting industry more broadly. can data brokers with massive troves of data ever fully guarantee the security of that data? And if not, should such entities even exist? And if they must, how do we secure both transparency and accountability from the companies that trade on the most intimate details of our lives? I look forward to the testimony of our three witnesses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Franken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, you just were talking about this human error. I want to be crystal clear about something. In your written testimony, you reference the, quote, sophisticated cyber criminals who have been behind the attacks on a long list of companies and agencies, including now yours. But I understand that numerous other entities were provided with the same U.S. CERT alert that Equifax was. For those entities, the vulnerability was assessed and patched, in some cases within hours and at very little cost. Mr. Smith, this was not a novel vulnerability with a novel solution. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Now, yesterday you told Representative Walden that the, quote, human error was the individual who was responsible for communicating to the organization to apply the patch did not, end quote. And you just sort of said the same thing in your answer to Chairman Flake. Representative Walden asked, quote, so does that mean that the individual knew that the software was there and it needed to be patched and did not communicate that to the team that does the patching? Is that the heart of the issue here? And you confirmed that that was the case, and you just said the same thing, right?
Clarification, if I may, Senator. I am not certain that the individual who was responsible for communicating that the patch needed to be applied, that he knew the software was deployed. He was responsible for communicating to his team to look for the software. If the software existed, patch the software.
Okay, well, it's an individual. Mm-hmm. I guess my question then is, why is the security of 145 million Americans' personal information all in the hands of one guy? Why is it all up to Gus? How did you, knowing the seriousness of these, put it in the hands of one guy to screw up?
If I may, clarification, this one guy was responsible for the patching process. He had a team underneath him. He did not communicate and ensure a closed-loop process was followed. Number two, I mentioned in my oral...
That doesn't change that it's up to one guy, and that you've said that this is one human error, and the human error was one guy.
And I think, as I mentioned in my oral comments and my written comments, that was followed up by technology, where we deployed a scanner on the 15th of March that, from a technology perspective, was looking for vulnerabilities, and it did not find it either.
Okay. Mr. Smith, you told the House Energy and Commerce Committee and the Senate Banking Committee that it was a, quote, mistake that the terms of use for your Trusted ID Premier product initially included a forced arbitration clause. You said that the, quote, boilerplate language was removed as soon as possible. Now, this begs a number of other questions, but I'll just stick to the one that's most obvious to me, and that Senator Van Hollen hit on this morning. If you recognize that it would be inappropriate to subject consumers who have been wronged as a result of the breach to forced arbitration, why is it that you think it is appropriate to subject anyone who claims to have been wronged by your company into forced arbitration? Are you suggesting that every other consumer who may have been cheated or mistreated by Equifax is not worthy of the same access to justice as those who have been harmed by this breach?
Senator, if I may to clarify, the arbitration clause is in a series of products that we offer to consumers where consumers have options. If they don't like the arbitration clause in the products we offer for sale, they have the ability and right to go somewhere else. It was never our intent to have an
This is
arbitration
in the
clause.
terms of service that you would click on?
It's standard terms for consumer products, yes. It was never intended.
How long is that terms of service document? How many pages?
I don't know. We can
You
get
don't
that.
know?
We can get that for you.
If I handed it to you right now, would you be able to find the, what you'd have to opt out of? Or actually, what you'd have to read in order to say, oh, I get it, I can't go to court?
Senator, the point I was trying to make is,
Would a human being be able to do that? That's my question. If I gave you now the terms, the conditions for signing on to the product that you sent to people, would they have been able to find it like in 5 minutes?
I have not studied that document, but my point was, that was.
Okay, I think that answers the question. Which this is a common practice, which is companies like you put in these clauses that no one's going to read. But you're sending these people who are vulnerable because their information has been stolen a thing that basically says, here, use this product that will give you for free for a year to check your credit and to check your whether you've been breached or not. And oh, by the way, not only can't you sue us if we screw this up, you can't sue us for the original breach.
The arbitration clause was removed within 24 hours.
Okay, but it isn't in your other products.
On the breach solution that was offered.
No, I asked you a question, and I just really would like you to answer the question.
I said, yes, it's in the products that we sell.
Thank you.